What is up, like fam? It is David, your spiritual awakening coach, here to help you through your spiritual awakening. 3 signs of a spiritual awakening. Ooh, we love these types of topics. Let's get into it right now. 3 signs of a spiritual awakening. Number 1, you no longer look to any external source for approval. All right, guys, so this one is huge. After a spiritual awakening, you begin to realize that spiritual maturity, spiritual growth, spiritual evolution all leads to spiritual sovereignty. Before spiritual awakening, you are not really aware of the ego. You're living through the lens of the ego's lens of fear, basically, and you are believing that you are the identity that may have been handed down to you through programming, your social economic status, what your parents may have taught you, the religion handed down to you, your circumstances and environment. All of this comprises the false self. The false self is the identity that your ego created for you based off of these paradigms and programs. And you don't know any better because you're living as the ego. Once you have a spiritual awakening is waking up from the perspective of the ego and at least being aware of the ego, where you now have the option to take one step back, what we like to call the observer mind, and observe the ego. And you're very much aware of the ego's agenda, which is typically in alignment with control and fear. The opposite frequency of the dominant frequency of source or God, which is love. And once you become aware of the ego's agenda, now you are very much aware of the difference between ego and higher consciousness, fear and love, man-made 3D nonsense and unconditional love, God. So spiritual sovereignty, not looking to the external for approval, means you understanding that you are a fractal of source or God, having a physical experience. And a lot of the man-made fear-based dogma and doctrine that may have been handed down to you, you now see a lot of hypocrisy and contradictions for the very simple fact that it's not unconditional love. A lot of these doctrines seem to forget the word unconditional when they try to describe God, because they put a whole lot of conditions on getting close to God or being accepted by God. There's no way you couldn't be accepted by God because you are God having a physical experience. This is what you agreed to forget when you took on an ego and incarnated into the physical. So a spiritual awakening is about dissolving that false self comprised by the ego so that you can step into your understanding that you are source having a physical experience. So up to the age of 7, the brain is very much in the theta brainwave state, the state of the subconscious. So all of these paradigms and dogma and doctrine that was handed down to you by definitely well-intending caregivers, but I think it's safe to say that a lot of caregivers growing up may not have been, spiritually advanced. They may not have been too awake, and they're just regurgitating what their parents handed down to them and handed down generation after generation without questioning anything. And what's taken in prior to the age of 7 is accepted as the subconscious belief until the age of 7, where the logical mind is developed, and the logical mind acts as the balancer and says, hey, whoa, that doesn't make sense. I'm not letting that into my subconscious beliefs. Or, hey, yeah, that resonates. I'm going to adopt that as my personal truth. So when you have a spiritual awakening and you are then aware of the ego and you take that one step back from the ego, you now have the critical thinking to discern what's actually in alignment with love and what's more in alignment with fear. Number 2, you operate solely on what is true for you. You finally trust the beat of your own internal drummer. And all right, guys. So as I mentioned, a spiritual awakening is waking up from the identity as the ego, being aware of the ego and taking one step back from the ego. What does this mean? You're being aware of fear. You're not identifying as fear. living life through the lens of fear. You're taking one step back from ego, taking one step back from fear. Once you become aware of fear and its agenda, then you can very clearly see through things that are contradictory to the opposite frequency of fear, which is love, the dominant frequency of source, the dominant frequency of God. By default, the more that you get out of alignment with ego, the more you get in alignment with God, source. So all of a sudden, you go on, you have no fear of going into the self-discovery phase. You don't believe that you're going to be punished just for seeking knowledge. There's no such a thing as a forbidden fruit. Why would any loving parent want to forbid knowledge from a child that it loves, right? This makes absolutely no sense. It's man-made nonsense, basically. It was made by humans coming from a place of fear. There's no divine retribution for you trying to find out more about yourself. This indoctrination that the more blind you are, the more you don't ask questions, the more devout you are to this man's perverted concept of God. This is pure stupidity. Any loving parent wants their child to have all the information that they can have so that they can actually grow up and be a self-sufficient adult, just like the parent. Okay? So when you get out of fear, you get more in alignment with the dominant frequency of source, and you do self-discovery. What is true for you? And because you've had a spiritual awakening and you're less in alignment with fear and ego, by default, what's true for you is going to be more in alignment with unconditional love. And all of a sudden, you start adopting these new principles and paradigms and teachings that are in alignment with unconditional love. Not conditional love, unconditional love. And then you start living more from the heart space, living more from expansion, unity consciousness. You're no longer living so much in the ego, living in fear. The ego is all about separation, divisiveness, duality. Oh, that group over there, they don't believe what we believe. We can't talk to them. Oh, that group over there, they're going to hell because they haven't accepted someone as their savior. There's nothing to be saved from. Drop the fear. This is man-made nonsense. And when you have a spiritual awakening, you step into your spiritual sovereignty, you go into self-discovery, and you figure out what resonates with you, which is most likely going to be in alignment with unconditional love. And then you start living from the love space. You're not living from a place of judgment. You're not living from a place of condemnation and damnation and all of this man-made nonsense. You're accepting your fellow human as an aspect of source just like you, and as an aspect of yourself. It's a very free and soul liberating way to live. Trust me. And number three, you no longer try to convert people to your way of thinking just to validate your beliefs. Your beliefs no longer need to be validated by anyone but yourself to be true. So what you will find with a lot of people that are indoctrinated with a bunch of fear-based dogma is that there is an internal struggle between the head, ego, and the heart, love. And because of this internal struggle, they have to get into other people's lanes and convince them to believe what they believe to validate a belief that is vibrationally dissonant within themselves. Because the ego says, well, I've got to believe this, and if I don't believe this, then they're going to kick me out of that group, and I might go to hell, and I may not make it into heaven, and this is going to happen, and that's going to happen, and a bunch of fear. But the heart says, yeah, that's not love. That's not going to happen. Why are you believing this? Oh, no, I've got to believe it because if I don't, then I'm a bad, and then you've got this internal struggle. So then that person says, well, hey, let me step into this person's lane and convert them to what I believe. And if they believe it, then that validates my belief. Oh, it must be true. This other person believes it. Look at these people. They believe it too. So the beauty of a spiritual awakening is when you lose that fear, you do the self-discovery, you find what resonates with you, which is usually in alignment with unconditional love, is in the heart. The heart does not need validation because the heart is in alignment with unity. See that circle? There's no contradiction there. All is one, right? It's the ego that believes in separation, duality, divisiveness. And when you're trying to make two polar opposite frequencies share the same space, fear and love, there's going to be some internal conflict. And that's where a lot of people just turn a blind eye. Oh, no, 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 we can't question. We just have to have faith. Well, when you don't question, then you're able to sleep easy at night, even though it doesn't make sense. You're just turning a blind eye to asking critical questions and getting everything to resonate within. But when you live from the heart, you're out of alignment with fear. You're out of alignment with, retribution and all of this stuff that man programs you into believing is going to happen. And your internal beliefs becomes your experience. You gain knowledge through experience. This is what's known as gnosis. You live from the heart. You see that living from the heart, people are more in alignment with you. They're more accepting. They're more loving to you because you're in a more loving and accepting frequency. And hey, look, I've asked questions. There's no divine retribution. My life has never been happier and freer. And then you realize that all of that was just BS to control you and fear you into good behavior and obedience in the first place. So when you live from the heart doesn't need validation because there's no contradiction with unconditional love. This is the thing. It's only the ego that has all of these internal wars. Remember, ego, EGO, stands for edging God out. This is something Wayne Dyer used to say all the time, and it really resonates. Why would ego edge God out? Because ego is the opposite frequency of the dominant frequency of God, which is love. So I hope that this has helped you guys find your own path, find what is true for you. Stop being scared of doing the self-discovery to see what resonates. You never have to be afraid of following the path of love. Okay? Let that sink in. I love you guys. Namaste.